Today is November 4th, 2009. My name is David Salk, and I'm here with Mr. Matthews. And Annie Boswell is in the room, and we're here with Mary Wood.
Weed.
We are here with Mary Wood.
Weed.
Oh, Mary Weed? Okay.
From the library.
Where were you born, Mr. Matthews?
Born here in Chicago, right in Chicago,
And when were you born?
in December of 1937.
Okay. And what branch of the service did you join?
The Navy, U.S. Navy.
And why did you join the Navy?
The first incentive was because they offered a scholarship. So I joined because of the scholarship, and really enjoyed it. And once my schooling was over, would have joined it without the scholarship. It's a great career.
What was your rank?
My final rank was captain, which is the same as full colonel in the other services.
And what conflicts or wars did you serve during?
I was lucky enough to be in between the wars. I was in after the Korean War and got out. Well, got out. The Vietnam War was starting, but it was like secret. So I technically got out before the Vietnam War started. So I was in between the wars.
Okay. And according to your bio form, you were a member of the NROTC program at Northwestern.
Yes.
And can you explain what NROTC is?
The NROTC is ROTC, Reserve Officers Training Corps, with the Navy tacked onto the front of it. NROTC. It's a officer training program. They have a scholarship program and a non-scholarship program. You can go to a school like Northwestern, a college like Northwestern, and not have a Navy scholarship, but still join the NROTC. Call them contract students. But you take a course, a Navy course every. Northwestern was on quarters, every quarter, and you drill. You come in and drill once a week with your uniform on, and then each summer, the 3 summers between your college years, you go on a midshipman cruise. We went down to Chile the first year, Panama Canal in Chile, and Corpus Christi and Little Creek, Virginia the second year for amphibious training, and then up and down the East Coast on the third summer cruise.
Of all the different types of ROTC, why did you choose Navy?
Again, because of the scholarship.
So Navy was the only one that offered the scholarship?
You know, I'm not sure if the other ones offered a scholarship or not. I know the Navy was a really good scholarship. It was full tuition, books, and fees, so it was really hard to beat.
Okay. How did the ROTC program prepare you to be a commissioned officer?
Well, all those courses, 3 times 4, 12 different courses we took. And they got more difficult and more advanced as you went through. As you became a senior, you took leadership courses and courses on how to manage Navy departments on the ship and that kind of thing. So that, along with the cruises and the responsibilities that you were given on those cruises to lead people and to organize systems and stuff, prepared me for the active duty.
So you had training in leadership during college, and after you left college, did you go to officer candidate school?
No, the NROTC program or the officer candidate school is as a substitute for the NROTC program. You go to one or the other. If you don't go into NROTC and graduate with a degree, you can go to officer candidate school and get your commission that way. It's a shorter period of time, although it's outside the time period of your college studies.
So the training that you got during college was the extent of your training?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and you learned a lot. Was it very physical being in all that training?
You know, it wasn't physical back then, but the stuff I read from the Northwestern NROTC unit today indicates that it is a lot more physical. They have pictures in there of the guys and gals in their athletic gear playing all kinds of games and running races and stuff like that. So I think nowadays it's the emphasis is a lot more on physical fitness than it was back when I went through it.
Do you remember any of your instructors?
Well, there was a Lieutenant Bell, Chittenden, Commander Crowley, who was the Marine. He was a great instructor. I think those are they changed every 2 years, so they weren't there very long. Those are the ones I remember.
Did you make friends
Oh
in
yeah.
the program?
In fact, we're celebrating our 50th anniversary of our graduation from Northwestern, and another fellow, NROTC fellow, and myself are thinking of joining the committee with an eye toward getting our Navy unit, as many of our Navy unit guys back for the reunion as we can.
So how did it feel to graduate from Northwestern, having done the NROTC program and on your way to a career in the military?
It felt terrific. I was very proud of myself.
And you were assigned to an aircraft carrier. Did you choose to serve on an aircraft carrier, or was
You
that-
put in, when you graduate, you put in what your wishes are, and I put in small combatant, which would be a destroyer, and large combatant, and got a large combatant, got the carrier.
Had you been given a different type of warship, how do you think your experience in the Navy would have been affected?
Not too much different. Different people, different platform, or different ship. But I don't think the experiences would be that much different.
Okay. Can you tell us about life aboard your aircraft carrier?
It was very exciting. One of the things that when you're in the Navy and on board a ship, in port and at sea, you're on 24/7. So they have what they call a watch schedule, which is 4-hour increments through the day, and you're assigned one of those watches. And depending on how many people are in your department and what has to be done, you can be serving like 1 in 8 or 1 in 6 or 1 in 4 if you're in combat conditions. In other words, every fourth 4-hour period, you'd be standing watch in the Combat Information Center or in the Communications Shack or down in the boiler room or the engine room or the fire room. So that's what was your question again?
My question was, what was life like?
Oh, So you would have a job assignment. I had a number of them. I was the education and training officer for a while. I was a CIC watch officer for a while, and some other electronics duties. So you'd have a regular job that you'd work at during the day, and then you'd stand these watches in between, or vice versa. So you had to balance and juggle the work that you had to get done in your office or in your spaces, and the time that you had to spend on watch.
Just so it's on record, what was the ship that you served on?
USS Bonhomme Richard. It's now been turned into beer cans, which is an expression they use for when a ship goes in and gets all chopped up.
So,
USS Bonhomme Richard, excuse me, David, CBA 31 was its designation, attack aircraft carrier number 31.
and you said you had that same routine every day. How did you deal with having to do the same thing for however long you
Well,
were
it was like having a job in civilian life. You come to the same place every day, but what you do is different. Different things come up, different requirements, demands, emergencies come up. So it really wasn't that routine. It was same people, same place, but different things were always happening.
When did you decide, or what made you decide to make the Navy your career?
I got out of the Navy after 3 years. In the NROTC program, the way you pay the government back for the expense of your training and your college education is by serving on active duty. So when I was in, it was a 3-year requirement. So you'd get 4 years of college and you have to serve 3 years in active duty. Now I think it's 4 years. But when I got out of the Navy, I resigned my active duty commission because I was starting a family, and no more and got out, and I got a letter from the Navy saying I had been promoted from lieutenant junior grade to lieutenant, and lieutenant for ensigns and lieutenant junior grades is a big step. I mean, lieutenants are like, well, not like God, but they're really respected because you really earned that next rank, and you wore the double bars. It's really cool. And so I didn't really have any plan on joining the reserves, but I got this letter saying I'd been promoted. All I had to do was go out to Glenview and sign a piece of paper, and I would get my, they call them tracks, something tracks. So I did that, and I joined the reserves. That was in '63, and stayed in, met a lot of wonderful people, and retired in '91.
There were many conflicts going on, or a few, during the time that you were in the Navy. You said that you served in between conflicts.
Mm-hmm.
Were you involved in any whatsoever?
No, the big thing that happened when I was in was the Cuban Missile Crisis, and it's really interesting the way the military services work. The Cuban Missile Crisis, of course, occurred a blockade around Cuba. We found out that they had missiles on there that could reach all of the United States. So it was a big, scary thing, and we wanted them out of there. So he blockaded the island of Cuba, but all of the ships in the Navy all around the world went on what's called Condition 1, which is wartime condition in your watches. We talked before about you could do your 4-hour watches, like 1 and 12, 1 and 8, 1 and 4. This was what they call port and starboard. So you're on 4 hours and you're off 4 hours. On 4 hours, off 4 hours. Excuse me. And the reason they do that is so that there are the maximum number of people on watch on the ship at any given time. So if something happens, you've got half of the complement of the ship on their stations. So it was tense for us, but at the same time, Cuba's over here and we're over off the coast of Japan when it happens. We're a long ways away. But I suppose, and they supposed that, someone could, if something broke out, they could attack, our ship way over there by Japan.
Did you ever come in contact with enemy shipping?
No, although when I was in Japan had a couple small destroyers that they used for what they called National Defense Force, and when I saw those with the rising sun, and of course they were our friends by then. This was 1960 to 63, but it still gave me like the shivers to see a Japanese warship having experience, even though I was young, World War II and all the stuff that happened in World War II. But I never did see a. Wait a minute. No, we saw a Russian trawler one time. This was during the Cold War, of course.
Okay. Were the aircraft on your ship ever assigned to bomb a target or do reconnaissance or something of that nature?
They did reconnaissance. We didn't really know about it. Ship's company really didn't know about it at the time, but we had reconnaissance aircraft, and they would fly over Vietnam and take photographs at the time. Yes.
So you were able to achieve the rank of captain.
Mm-hmm.
And what were some of your responsibilities as captain on an aircraft carrier?
Well, on the aircraft carrier, I was only lieutenant junior grade, so I was a junior officer on the carrier. The other ranks, the other promotions that I got were all in the reserves, all out at Glenview.
So when did your time serving on the ship actually end?
June of 1963. So I was in from June of 60 to June of 63.
And what did you do once you were done traveling on the ship?
Came back home, started my family, and got that infamous letter from the Navy saying I'd been promoted to lieutenant. and then joined the reserves.
And what did you do in the reserves?
Started out as in an operational control center, which was responsible for training the P-2 aircraft, the anti-submarine aircraft out at Glenview. Was in that for a few years, and then in about 1977, switched to intelligence. I spent the rest of my time in intelligence.
What did you do in intelligence? Can you?
We had 7 intelligence units, about 250 people, that did a number of different things. Each intelligence unit except one, supported a active duty command. Most of them were in Washington or Norfolk. We had one in Missouri, St. Louis, Missouri, and one in Madison, Wisconsin, and one at Great Lakes. And the rest are in Norfolk or in Washington, D.C. And we would do things for the active duty commands. They were called gaining commands. They would send us data that we would analyze and put in the computer format, or they would send us interviews of people who had escaped from Eastern Europe, and we would go through the interviews and document and organize the information that was in the interviews. All kinds of stuff. Some I can't talk about, but generally things like organizing facts and figures and that kind of thing. Some photography work.
So while working for intelligence, did you get to live with your family on bases?
No, it was. Excuse me, David. It was in the reserves. It's a 1 weekend a month. So you'd go out, and if you lived close enough, you wouldn't have to stay at the base. You'd go home at night on Saturday, come back on Sunday. And guys who lived more, farther away would come in and stay overnight at the base. And then you had a requirement for 2 weeks of active duty during the year. So you'd usually go out to one of these gaining commands and help them, in Norfolk or Washington D.C. or St. Louis, Missouri, or wherever, or go to a school.
Okay. What was your occupation in addition to being in the reserve?
I worked at Bell & Howell for 37 years. Bell & Howell, you probably don't know, was a big camera and projector manufacturing company.
Okay. Did you ever think about leaving the reserves during your 35-year career?
No, I wondered about that when I was in it, and my philosophy was that I was going to stay in it as long as it was interesting and challenging, and I was doing something productive. And the time never came where those things didn't stay true. I kept on meeting nice people. I'd made a lot of good lifelong friends. We were doing things that were very helpful to these gaining commands, and never got boring. And I just really, really liked it.
Going back to your experience on the aircraft carrier, were there any experiences, any stories, something that really stands out that you remember that happened while you were?
Oh yeah, lots of things. I was telling Mary when I first came in that thank you. The civilians, we civilians think of the military as something that certain people go into, young people go into, and they'll go through boot camp or training camp, and they'll go to a station someplace, and they'll be away from home, and then they come back and their hair is cut short, and they have their uniform on, and they've lost a lot of weight, and they're very handsome, and usually have a suntan, and that's the military. But in reality, all of the services in varying degrees have a lot of danger in them, even in peacetime. We think of people getting killed and injured during wars, but it happens during peacetime too. And specifically on that duty on the carrier, we went on 2 6.5-month cruises over to the Far East, Philippines and Hong Kong and Japan. And in each of those crews, we lost, one we lost 5, one we lost 7 people on a 6.5-month cruise. Some with aircraft, some on the ship. So those were instances, to answer your question, that were not pleasant but were memorable. And you lose someone that you were working with. But we had one time when the carrier was in the local area. We were stationed in San Diego. Its job was to train pilots and keep pilots proficient in landing and taking off from the carrier. So we would come in for 10 days, and then we would go out for 10 days and just steam around off the California coast. And these different planes would come out and do what's called carrier qualifications. And they would land and take off and land and take off and land and take off day and night. So one day there were 2 carriers out there, us and the Ticonderoga, the Bonhammer Shard and the Ticonderoga, and we were steaming between, this is an answer to your question about a memorable moment, steaming between San Clemente and Santa Catalina, which are those 2 big islands off of California. And it was a day where there wasn't much wind, and when you're operating a carrier and flying aircraft off a carrier, you're always searching for the wind, because the more wind you can get over the deck, the easier it is for the planes to take off and land. Because the ship has to go at maximum speed in order to give the planes that amount of wind, and then if you can find extra wind, it just makes it easier and safer for them to land and take off. So we were going, the only wind that was around was between these 2 islands. So these 2 carriers were doing loops between these 2 islands. I was on the bridge, and all of a sudden we were coming downwind, which means we were just going down to catch the wind. Ticonderoga was coming up, and when you're operating with the aircraft and the carrier, you're constantly tweaking the direction that the carrier is facing in order to capture the most wind. So we're like this, and Ticonderoga turned and was heading right toward us. We were both doing 31 knots. So it's about 62 miles an hour. These 35,000-ton carriers were heading toward each other, and at the last minute they turned and both ships passed, and you could have probably from here to the street is how close we were. Everyone on the deck just stood there and just went like that. It was an amazing moment.
Was there communication between the ships, or did they turn like?
We didn't have direct communication with them at the time. We could have, but it would have taken a minute to bring it up. But I think we blew our horn, which is the foghorn, and then they realized what they were doing and made that slight turn to pass the port. It was very scary. And another incident, when the ship has all the fuel to operate on, and it has all the fuel for the airplanes that it has on board, and the highest octane fuel that it has is for at that time the helicopters, which were used high octane gasoline. So they would put that gasoline in special tanks at night, and they'd put nitrogen. Is it nitrogen that's not flammable? They put an inert gas on top of it, so that it wouldn't be flammable. Then in the morning they would pump that gas off so they could get at the gasoline and gas up the helicopters. So they would always put out the smoking lamp. The smoking lamp is just an expression where if they say the smoking lamp is out, it means you can't smoke on the ship because we're doing something with high octane fuel. So they'd make the announcement, the smoking lamp is out, smoking lamp is out. And then they would, while pumping the avgas, so they would pump off this inert gas. And it was another real calm day, and we're steaming along the coast of California, pumping avgas, and the captain decides to have a man overboard drill. And you can do this every once in a while when in between other exercises. And they had a dummy up on the bridge, just stuffed with the Navy working uniform, stuffed full of rags and stuff, and he would just take that and throw it over the side and not say anything to anybody. And somebody that was topside had to see it, and what you'd do is you'd yell, man overboard, starboard side. And then they'd start banging the bells, and they'd start making the calculations for how they're going to turn the ship around to come back past where this person fell overboard. Sea is calmed, and one of the stewards thought that he would help things out, and he picked up what's called I think they call it a smoke pot. It's like a 4x4 with a weight in the bottom. It's about that high, and it has like a smoke bomb on the top. And if you want to mark a spot, you pull a pin, activate the smoke bomb, and just throw the thing overboard. So he did that. The carrier did what's called a racetrack pattern, where it came around to the spot where the person supposedly fell overboard. And in doing so, remember your physics, the wind, the slight wind of the carrier captured all those fumes that had been coming off of the avgas tanks. And when it got around here to where that smoke pot was burning, there was this flash, I've got goosebumps, there was this flash fire, and there's huge vents out alongside the ship where the air comes in. The inside of the ship is very, very large, so it takes a lot of air to keep it all healthy. So the fans are going like crazy, so all of these vents up and down the ship pulled all this smoke in from this fire. And all of a sudden, from the bridge, you heard bang da bang da bang, bang da bang da bang, fire in engine room 3, bang da bang da bang, fire in hangar bay 1, bang da bang, fire in the mess deck, bang da bang da bang. It sounded like the whole ship was on fire. And of course, it was filling up from the smoke from this fire, which was like that, but out right away. So that was a very scary and memorable moment, to answer your question. The whole side of the ship, from the water line and from just a short distance back from the bow and all the way to the stern, was burned. All the paint was burned off from that flash fire. Long story.
Yeah. Well, on a lighter note, what was the food like?
Food was very good, both enlisted and officer. The officers ate in what's called the wardroom, and the enlisted men ate on the mess decks. And as you stayed out, when you went out to sea and stayed out at sea, the first thing you'd run out of is fresh milk, and then you might run out of ice cream and fresh vegetables and fruits, and you'd start eating canned stuff and frozen stuff and that kind of thing. But the food was good. It got a little weird sometimes. We had some wonderful Filipino chefs, and they weren't real keen on some of the finer points of what we eat and how we eat it. So you might have blueberry pie for dessert, and it would initially be served to the first few tables with vanilla ice cream, and then they would run out of vanilla ice cream, so the latter tables might get the blueberry pie with chocolate ice cream on it instead of vanilla ice cream. But the food was good, to answer your question. Very healthy and more than you could ever eat.
What do people do to entertain themselves?
We had a movie every night, and then we had both on the mess decks and in the wardroom for officers and enlisted. We had card games and acey-deucey, which is a form of backgammon. Guys, including myself, would get into backgammon games and just play them all night long. Just you'd walk past, you'd come off of the 20 to 2400 watch, which is 8 o'clock to midnight, and go down to the wardroom for a snack before you went to bed, and you'd hear guys screaming, throwing their dice down, playing backgammon. Library, you could read, do extra work.
When you're on the ship for such a long period of time, did you feel like you developed a strong bond with the men within your crew?
Sure. Oh yeah. And you find out. Well, I suppose It's not exactly unlike in civilian life because you're with them, like you're saying, for longer periods. But you get to know them really well. Can't hide much when you're with somebody 24 hours a day. Yeah.
What did you think of your officers or fellow?
Senior
fellow-
officers and fellow officers, like I mentioned before, in the reserves, great bunch of people, very diverse. One of the interesting things, David, that I realized very quickly was that I was born and raised in Chicago. The only trip I think I took out of Chicago was when I was about 12. I went to Omaha to see my aunt. Other than that, I was in Chicago all that time. But when I got on the ship, both my midshipman cruises, like that first one down to Chile, we had NROTC people from Oklahoma, Texas, and Pennsylvania, and Florida. So I met people from all around the United States. And then when you get on the ship, you see them, meet them, and work with them from all over the country, and some foreign countries. They had a deal with the Philippines, for instance, where people could come into the Navy, come into the armed forces, and they liked the Navy. Come into the Navy and serve a number of years, and as a thank you for that, we would give them their citizenship, which is a really nice deal. And there were some wonderful people, but it was a really interesting to meet these people from all over, and they're very different.
How did you stay in touch with your family?
Mail.
Did you miss your family at all?
Oh, sure. There were a lot of moments where you really missed them. But yeah.
And do you remember when your time serving on active duty was over? Do you remember coming home and what that was like?
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah. I was up in Bremerton. The ship went into dry dock when I got out of the Navy. So I was in Bremerton. My wife and new daughter were in San Diego, and I'd gone down for the birth and then went back up to Bremerton, and then a month later came home and flew down to San Diego. And it was a sweet homecoming.
What did you win any medals, or were you awarded with any citations or medals?
2 medals that were given to everybody at different times, and then when I was a Reserve Intelligence Area Coordinator, I received the Meritorious Service Medal.
And what is that?
It's a medium to medium high medal for I don't want to break my arm, pat myself on the back. Extraordinary service. When I was the head, I held the position of the head intelligence person over those 7 units I was telling you about for 2 years, and because of that work there, I received that Meritorious Service Medal.
Did you ever want to go back onto active duty once you were in the reserves, or did you like living?
Well, we did for those 2-week periods, those 2-week active duties that we did every year, which was a nice touch of going back and remembering active duty periods. I guess I never really got the urge to go back in, although since I left, a lot of the people are going back with the wars going on and stuff. We've had at least two people that I know of down in Gitmo, working down in Gitmo, and then others over in Iraq and Afghanistan, working on admirals and general staff and that kind of thing. So they're very involved.
What brought your military career to an end in 1991?
There's a rule that it isn't observed that much with the junior ranks, but when you get into the senior ranks, there's a rule that you can only be in a certain rank for a certain number of years without being promoted. So it's a pyramid kind of thing. And when you're down at the bottom of the pyramid with the junior ranks, there's a lot of billets, which are jobs available. But as you get up toward the top, there's fewer and fewer and fewer. So a lot of us officers that made captain Didn't make admiral, because there's only one admiral out of hundreds and, probably hundreds and hundreds of captains. So after a certain amount of time, they just tell you that your time is up and you need to retire.
What have you done since then, since 1991?
Well, I worked at Bell and Howell until 2000. Retired in 2000, and since then been retired. I volunteer at the Chicago Botanic Garden, and I work there once a week, and see my kids and enjoy putzing around home and retirement life.
Overall, how do you think your experience in the military, in the Navy, has influenced your way of thinking and you as a person?
It's a really good question, and I have oftentimes pondered, not to get too whatever here, what kind of a person I would be without my military experience, including my NROTC experience in college. And I can never answer the question. I don't know what I would have been like. I like the way I turned out. I like the person that I am. But I wouldn't have been the same person without the military, without the college education, without the NROTC experience, without the active duty experience, without the reserve experience.
So if you could go back, do you think you would make the same choices?
Oh yeah,
as
with
you did?
the moment's notice.
Okay. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
A couple of things. Again, I was talking to Mary before. I think it's too bad that civilians we in civilian life don't recognize all that the military people go through, even when there's not a war on. And I think it would be nice if we knew more about that and were more appreciative of what they did and what they sacrificed, even in as I say, in non-war times. The other thing is that I strongly encourage you to, or anybody else that's thinking about college, looking at college, to look into, if you have any inclination at all toward the military, or feelings for your country even, to look into the military scholarships, specifically the Navy scholarship. It was a wonderful experience, and I'd highly recommend it to anybody.
Okay, well, thank you very much.
You're very welcome. My pleasure.
Thank you.